19 years I kept the relay at Caressa Reach, and for 18 of them nothing that mattered ever came through it. That's not a complaint. A beacon keeper's whole job is to be the last honest instrument in a system full of people who've stopped checking their instruments. Caressa Reach sat on the outer skirt of the belt corridor, past the point where anyone important flew, logging drift debris and the occasional distress ping from a hauler too cheap to buy a newer transponder. I ran diagnostics every 6 hours. I filed reports nobody read. I kept the array clean of ice and the logs clean of gaps, because somewhere down the chain there was a supervisor who would one day need this post's record to be perfect, even if that day never came in my lifetime. The pattern started in my 11th year. A 5-tone pulse, faint, buried in the noise floor where the automated filters are built to throw things away. Most keepers would never have caught it. I caught it because I read my own noise floor the way another man might read a letter from someone he loved, slowly, all the way through, every time, in case there was a word in there he'd missed. I logged it. Central called it decay artifact off an old survey buoy and told me to stop flagging it. I kept flagging it anyway. Not because I believed anything grand about it, because it repeated, and repeating things are not decay. Decay gets worse. This got steadier. 8 years I watched it hold its shape while everything else in that noise floor rotted around it. I ran comparisons against every decommissioned buoy class in the corridor registry, and found nothing that matched. I ran it against known distress protocols from 6 neighboring systems, and found nothing there either. Whatever it wasn't filed anywhere a keeper could check. That should have told me something sooner than it did. In my 19th year the bearing sharpened enough to plot, and I understood, all at once and far too late, what steadiness like that actually meant. I requested a supply skiff detour to the source coordinates. Central denied it, not in the corridor's charted lanes, not worth the fuel, and besides, decay artifacts don't need retrieving. I sat with that answer for one shift, running the numbers again just to be certain I wasn't chasing my own hope. The pattern held. It always held. Then I invoked the Outer Relay Charter's Section 7, the emergency retrieval clause nobody had used at this post since before I arrived, logged the override in triplicate so no one could later say I'd hidden it, took the skiff myself, and flew 9 hours toward a signal that had been calling into the dark for 8 years, without once being wrong about where it was. I found a drift pod tumbling slow against a field of belt rubble, ablative shell scorched black on the leading face, the kind of scarring that only comes from a hard atmospheric exit followed by a very long time doing nothing but drifting. Old tech, decades old, a make I recognized only from decommission manuals I'd read for want of anything better to do on long nights. No visible thrusters left, no power signature beyond the faint pulse itself. By every reasonable measure it was a piece of debris that should have gone dark years before I ever caught its first echo. The 5-tone pulse was coming from inside it, and it was not decay artifact. It was a heartbeat. I cut the seal myself, hands shaking in a way they hadn't shaken in a long time. Inside, wrapped in a stasis lattice gone brittle with age, was a child. Small, gray-blue skin threaded with fine luminous seams along the wrists and throat. Seams that pulsed. I watched them pulse, in the exact 5-tone rhythm my array had been catching for 8 years. Not a machine transmitting, a living thing, singing itself toward rescue the only way its body knew how, for longer than it should have had to. I got her breathing steadier before I got her name, because she didn't have words for me yet and I didn't push. I called her Wren, after nothing in particular. It was just a sound that fit in my mouth easily, and she didn't flinch from it, which was as much agreement as I needed. Back at the station, I did the thing a man does when he understands what he's holding. I filed a biological welfare discovery under Section 7, cross-reference to the Corridor Health and Safety Accord's Article 14, the same hold provision that saved children up and down this belt for longer than I've been alive, and I filed it before I ate, before I slept, before I let myself feel anything about what I'd found. The hold buys 72 hours where no writ, no order, no directive can move her without going through me first. I've learned that paperwork filed early is worth more than courage filed late. She was frightened those first hours in the way that doesn't look like fear from the outside. Quiet, watchful, tracking every door, every vent, every place a threat might come from. The way a creature learns to watch when it's had nothing but a dying pod for company for longer than any child should. I didn't crowd her. I gave her the run of the station and kept my hands where she could see them, set food where she could reach it without me standing over her, and let her come to the doorway of my own quarters on her own time rather than mine. She didn't eat in front of me the first 2 days. She ate when she thought I wasn't looking, which was fine. I've kept watch on enough frightened things in my life to know that pretending not to see is sometimes the kindest thing a man can do. On the second night, when the array hummed through its automatic sweep, Her seams answered it without her seeming to notice they had. I found an old tuning rod in the tool locker, brass, decades unused, kept only because I never throw anything out that might one day earn its keep, and tapped her rhythm back to her on the hull plating. She went still, every part of her, the way a held breath goes still. Then she tapped it back to me, 5 notes, a little uneven, entirely hers. That was the whole conversation, and it was enough. After that she slept easier. After that she started following me on my rounds, small and quiet at my shoulder, watching what I checked and how, the way any child watches the only steady thing in a strange place. The directorate skiff docked on the 4th day. 2 agents, Vantic Signal Directorate, carrying a classified frequency suppression order older than I'd expected. The pattern, it turned out, matched a transmission class banned across the corridor since before the pod was ever launched, back when a signal like that meant a weapons test or a smuggled black box, not a child. The lead agent, a woman named Ash with a voice that had clearly delivered this exact order 100 times, told me the source was to be seized and the frequency terminated at origin. She did not know the origin breathed. I told her it did. I showed her the welfare hold, filed 4 days before her order reached my desk, and I watched her do the math a career officer does when procedure and reality stop agreeing with each other. She asked to see the source anyway. I let her. Ash is not a monster. She's an instrument, same as me, and instruments can be pointed wrong for years without ever being broken. Wren was in the common room when we came in, sitting on the deck plate with the tuning rod, and she didn't hide. She looked up at Ash the way she'd looked at everything since the pod, flat, careful, waiting to see what kind of thing this new person was. Ash stood in that doorway a long time. Then she asked me, quietly, how long the signal had been running. 8 years, I told her. Alone. Getting steadier, not weaker, the whole time. She didn't say anything else for a while. When she finally spoke, it wasn't to me. It was into her comm, filing an amended report that reclassified the source as a live biological discovery under emergency welfare protocol, superseding the suppression order pending directorate review. The review took 11 weeks. Nobody came looking in that time, and nobody came looking after, because there was no resettlement contact on file for a species with no name in the corridor's registry, no family, no faction, no one but a man who'd spent 19 years reading his own static for something worth hearing. I filed for provisional custody on the 80th day. It went through without argument, because there was no one left to argue it. She sleeps in the old equipment berth now, the one I never had a use for until her. Some nights, when the array runs its automatic sweep, I hear her seams answer it before she's even awake. 5 notes into the dark, steady as anything I've ever logged. I still tap it back to her on the brass rod most mornings, out of habit more than need. Last week the array caught something new, faint, buried where the filters throw things away. A 5-tone pattern that wasn't hers and wasn't mine and wasn't decay. I logged it. I'll keep flagging it for as long as it takes. I've got the time, and I've learned, finally, exactly what steady sounds like when you're listening for it.